Hey, welcome back everyone. It's been a while since I've made a watch video on this channel. So I wanted to get into a watch that I just picked up recently that I have seen these before in the market and whatnot, but I've just never really had a chance to check one out. I was really into watches probably in the last, 10 to up until probably 4 or 5 years ago. And one big thing that had changed in that period of time when I kind of didn't do as much with watches was there was a massive flood of micro brands, a lot of brands coming out of China, Singapore, places like this that I just wasn't, used to. A lot of new brands, things like that. So one of those that popped up was Ratio, and it's a Singapore-based company and they are mainly making dive watches, although they do a lot more different types of watches now. This was relatively new, but after doing some research, they seem to be pretty well received. Generally speaking, very well made watches. I couldn't find where specifically they were made. I'm assuming they are made in China. However, when I asked Google AI, it seemed to think that they were made in Singapore, although that's where the company's based out of, so that just may be that. So anyway, regardless, very well made watch, and this is their 1,000 meter dive watch. This is their Freediver. This is a big, heavy, chunky tool watch. This thing means business, and I liked it for a couple of reasons. One was it wasn't really, so far as I could tell, it was not an homage to anything. They do make some homage watches, but this, as far as I could tell, this was not an homage to any watch. This is just a Ratio Freediver. Now they have different types of Freedivers, and they all have a similar aesthetic, but they are quite a bit different. Different sizes, different dials, different bezels, different cases, all sorts of different things. So, but as I said, 1,000 meters, water resistant, very impressive. It has a helium escape valve up here that you can undo if you happen to want to take a look at the Titanic or something, and on your way back up you want to release the helium that has built up. But if you're most people, you'll probably never need to use that, but it's kind of cool that it's there. First thing I noticed was a very unique case. Now, for my preferences, I typically prefer a side to be more smooth, but this is such a big watch that the lugs do kind of, the case kind of wraps around and then the lugs come out. They are very short lugs. However, one thing that is very cool is the case kind of wraps up and around the bezel, which I think is pretty interesting. And it's a very nice fit as well. It's I don't see any rough edges. The finishing on the case, very good actually. I was actually very surprised. One of my biggest fears before I got this watch, and I have had it come true with other micro brands, watches that you might, and this is not one of them, but watches that you might get off of AliExpress, something like that, and there are some good ones out there. However, there tends to be some weird finishing issues sometimes. Usually the font, things like that. Now, the font on this one, pretty basic, nothing special. However, I will say it is fairly consistent, which I was pretty happy to see. This runs a Seiko, basically a NH36 or NH35 movement, one of those two. It has the date, that changes the designation a little bit, but it runs a movement that a lot of other micro brands, including Seiko, not Seiko being a micro brand, but Seiko puts that movement in a ton of their watches. Basic, reliable movement. They can be kind of all over the place in terms of accuracy. This one is actually very accurate. If it's just laying down, not necessarily in use, it's testing about I think it was +2 seconds a day or something like that. So actually very good. But of course, any of them can be regulated, although I do not recommend trying to do that yourself. That is asking for trouble if you don't know what you're doing. So, like I said, this is a big watch. Has some really nice features that I like, mainly being this large crown. It is signed with their #2 logo, but what I like about it is it's quite large. And the action on it is very nice. It's very easy to turn. Even with gloves on, I can easily grab hold of it. The threading is very nice. It has a lot of threads on it. It also sticks, you can see there, it sticks below the case line, so it's very easy to get under there and move that crown. If I had a couple complaints about the watch, the first one is it took me a while to figure out, because I actually really like the bezel, and the bezel action is very nice. It's very solid. It has kind of a spring back feel to it. However, if I was to criticize something, one is I do not like aluminum bezel inserts. They just, in a day and age where everybody has either a ceramic or even a sapphire filled bezel insert, the aluminum looks just kind of flat and bland. However, it took me a while to realize that the font, the numbers on the bezel seem a little odd. I don't know. Looks like something that, yeah, I don't know. The font, it's just very basic. Not a big deal, just a observation I made. The next complaint I would have, and this is total personal preference, is this is a very thick watch. It has a very round case back, which you would expect with 1,000 meters. The watch, when you need a watch that it meets those depths, you need physical construction. It's just going to be bigger. There's no way around that. My complaint is, and this is a lot of watches, is that it doesn't make a smooth transition. It just kind of abruptly, the case ends, and then you get a slab, you know, just flat side to the actual case back. For example, I will take this off. This is my Citizen NY0040, and as you can see, this one has a nice curved transition, and you'll see the difference here. Small complaint, and that may be because of the movement, but that is one thing I noticed. The next thing I will bring up is pretty obvious, and I think you should expect it for a watch that is, you know, has this kind of water resistance or depth rating. Is it's quite a large watch. It measures 46 millimeters. I will say though, it does have shorter lugs, so it actually does wear reasonable. Typically, I will cap a watch around 44 millimeters. I would say this actually wears like a 44 millimeter. It doesn't wear massive. It is big, but it's not massive. So for reference, this is a 41 millimeter. And, you know, this is definitely quite a bit bigger. However, it's not obnoxious or anything. So let me put that guy over there, and I'll put this one on. This, it comes on a rubber or a silicone strap. It's okay. I think it's a little, has a little too much flex for my liking for such a heavy watch. But there you can see, it sits quite tall. It's definitely a tool watch. There's no mistaking this for anything else. But it's not ridiculous. The lugs are actually very, very short. If I do end up keeping this, I will probably get some straight end link, possibly for a bracelet, because on this, there's not much curvature there. So I think straight ends actually wouldn't look too bad. Normally I hate straight end links on a watch where they're not really, where it's not really designed for it. However, some watches like the Citizen 2, the lugs are pretty short, and you don't get a huge gap right here. And that makes it a little more tolerable, especially if you have something like a shark mesh bracelet, something like that. So let me see. The lug width is quite big, which is another reason I think this watch doesn't look as big as it actually is that this is a 24 millimeter lug width. So not going to be a ton of options out there for strap options. but there still will be a decent amount. There will certainly be enough for the most part. They do make a bracelet for this. However, as far as I can tell, they don't sell it separately, but it actually looks like a very nice bracelet, and it's a very unique looking bracelet. So I may, if I end up keeping this watch, I may end up trying to track one of those down. As you would imagine, it is quite a heavy watch. I mean, it's heavy. You definitely feel this when it's on wrist. There's no mistaking it. So I think you would have to be careful with what kind of bracelet you put on there if that's the route you go, because then this is going to become, you know, you're going to be lifting weights while you're lugging this thing around. Final thoughts are, these watches come in now around the $230, $240 mark realistically. I believe they're sold out on their website, but they're easy to find in other places. I think for that price, you're getting a lot of watch. I would happily pay this. I bought this locally, used off a person, very lightly used, but I would happily pay that much for this watch. It's very well made. It's very well thought out. The case finishing is very good. The case back is very nice. You get a sapphire crystal, 1,000 meters, stainless steel, serial number, very nice etching of a diver there, and it's very well done. It's very smooth. It's actually very comfortable to wear, despite the weight. It is actually very comfortable. So without further ado, let me go shut the lights off and we'll do a loom shot. All right, as you can see, the loom is very good. Now I will say it is much brighter on camera than it is in person. However, I would say it's probably not quite Seiko loom. However, I would probably compare it more to maybe what Citizen divers or maybe the Orient divers, what they put on their watch. But it is very bright, and as you can see here, it's very consistent, and I do like that. So anyway, I'll wrap this video up. This is the Ratio Freediver 1,000 meter watch. This one is definitely not as common as some of the other newer ones they've made, but for sure, if you're looking for just a big, chunky, super tough dive watch, tool watch, and you're not afraid of the size and weight, this is one I would definitely recommend. All right, thanks for watching.